Hello, fellow warriors, and welcome to lesson 28 on Ecclesiastes. The title Ecclesiastes means the preacher, the teacher, or one who addresses the assembly. Solomon certainly had something to preach. Solomon certainly had something to teach. That's not surprising, considering Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived. You certainly would think he had some things to pass on about life. But have you ever heard the proverb? It's not a biblical, scriptural proverb, but still a wise one. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. Solomon asked for wisdom. He got it. So he had to be careful concerning what he did with that wisdom. Was he? Nope. Evidence for this is plain to see in chapter 1, verse 2 of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon begins immediately to preach and to teach. And here's what he says. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. You shouldn't expect to hear that from a teacher. What if I taught a whole math lesson and at the end of the lesson said, it's all meaningless anyway? What kind of teacher would I be? That's not wisdom. In fact, when Solomon teaches that everything is meaningless, he's committing a fallacy of logic. Can you identify why it's a fallacy? Here's why. If Solomon says everything is meaningless, then he has just by definition made a meaningful statement. That's self-contradictory. It's illogical. It's dumb. So what could have prompted him to teach this? He sounds like a U of M fan. I think it was because of some of the poor life choices he made. And that's found in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 6, which tells us, Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the sons of Israel, You shall not associate with them, nor shall they associate with you, for they will surely turn your heart away after their gods. And Solomon held fast to those in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the gods of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not follow the Lord fully, as David his father had done. As a result of these poor choices, these foolish life choices, Solomon taught other things, like what he teaches in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. Listen to the preacher, the one who addresses the assembly. I said to myself, Behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. That's the poor choices. And I realize this is also striving after wind. Because in much wisdom there is much grief. And increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. That's what Solomon learned by his poor choices, but the same can be said of us. Do we always handle carefully the wisdom that we've obtained and learned? In fact, Solomon specifically addresses your age group with another teaching. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 9 and 10, Solomon says this: "Rejoice, young man," or we could say young woman as well, "during your childhood," that would be your middle school years, culturally, "and let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood or womanhood, and follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. You know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. So remove grief and anger from your heart and put away pain from your body, because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting." In other words, what's Solomon saying here? In some ways, he's trying to get you to do what he did so he doesn't feel so bad about his own poor choices, but that's foolish. But ultimately, he comes to a little bit different conclusion. And here's what he's trying to get across to you at your age. He's basically saying when you're young, you have many life choices to make. You can act on impulse, emotion, feeling, desire. In other words, sinful choices, like Solomon made. You can get ahead of yourself. You can get ahead of God's wisdom for your life. For example, God says no sex until marriage. But if you get ahead of God's plan, it can bring grief, anger, pain, unintended consequences, trouble. Yes, God can forgive and heal and move you on and forward in life, but it comes with consequences, and it can come with regret. Solomon wished he would never have learned some of the lessons he learned. They took him away from God and God's purposes for him. Foolish choices will do the same to you. This is not wisdom. So what is wisdom? What is important to learn in this life? What are some of the things in Ecclesiastes that Solomon teaches that are good, that are right, that aren't dumb? Well, Solomon interspersed the answer throughout the book of Ecclesiastes in places like chapter 3, verse 14, chapter 5, verse 7, chapter 7, verse 18, and chapter 8, verse 12. And he says the answer is to fear God, which begs the question then for further learning, what does it mean to fear God? Well, in Hebrew, the word for fear means to be in awe, to be in reverence. And it does mean to be in fear, but to be in a healthy kind of fear. Let's put a little context to that, because Solomon also taught in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14, why we should have a healthy fear of God, a reverence and an awe. He says, "For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. God will judge us on every foolish choice we make. He'll also reward us for every wise choice we make." That's something to be fearful of, something to be mindful of. It should put us in the fear of God, because this means the judgment concerning our eternity and what it's going to be like. So this healthy kind of fear, this knowledge that God is going to judge every act, every choice we make, whether wise or foolish, this kind of healthy fear should drive us to love and serve God, not to walk away from him. So this is difficult. This is a mature teaching. It can be hard for young people to understand at this point in life. But take it from me, an old man, with some wisdom and with some regrets. Fear God. Hold him in awe and reverence, and you will never be disappointed with the life that he has for you.